Okay, everybody.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to the Wednesday, July 21st special council meeting to go over the budget proposal. So Mike, I guess I can turn it over to you.
Before we start, can I just say something?
Sure.
That special meeting for the VRBO thing on August 2nd, can we have that at the regular meeting? I think everybody's assuming that it's going to be on the agenda for the regular meeting because public forum, if we don't act on it, it goes on the next regular agenda. I mean, did somebody call for that or call for that meeting? Did you call that? You didn't call that meeting?
At the regular meeting, Dave said we will try to schedule something. We'll try to schedule a meeting and include the county. So I contacted the county to see if they would be willing to come up here. They said yes. They gave me dates and times they were available. I put that out to you guys, and it's a meeting.
Yeah, I just wondered if we could do it at the regular meeting.
I
because
think that
that's
topic
when
would take way
everybody's
too
gonna-
long at a regular council meeting.
Yeah, I agree with Chip.
No,
I'm
she's
not.
in the right way.
August 2nd.
I'm just thinking that the citizens that were here
I
are
informed him.
assuming that we're going to do it at a regular meeting.
I informed him, Jeff Pfaff,
Oh, so they all know. they should
the
come
one
on
guy
August
that was
2nd.
here knows, yes.
Okay, but, okay, so technically you're saying that he called it at the regular meeting, okay.
What time is it?
Okay, we ready to
2
start?
o'clock on the 2nd.
Sorry.
Okay, we've got a lot of things to talk about and not a whole lot of time right now, so we'll get going. We're on item 2, so finally we have some good news. You know, when you're talking about budgets, it's always bad news. But the legislature, back in 2015, remember a lot of small cities would get state aid for roads. We're not one of those cities that got it. It was funded for a couple years and then they decided not to fund it. So because we're under 5,000 in population, we didn't qualify for that aid, but the law changed in 2015 and then every year after that, you know, the question was, are we going to fund this? If it's funded, what can we spend the money we get on? In the legislative session, it was, thanks TJ, it was funded and we already received our first allocation of it. The good thing about this is the funding is for construction and maintenance of roads located within the city and can include land acquisition, environmental analysis, design, engineering, construction, reconstruction, and maintenance. So this is really money we can use for, we don't have a road projects this year that doesn't have a funding source, so we can really consider using these funds in 2022. You got really basically 2 years to spend the money is the recommendation. And the amount we received was $89,362, half of which we got this week. The next payment will be coming in December. So that's good news. The other thing that's good news, it's a reminder from everybody, you know, as we have the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, since those were awarded, we get about $105 per resident is what it comes to based on the 2019 census. There's a pretty extensive process to go through to apply for that, to confirm that you want it. First, we have to get a resolution in place. The league has since sent out some proposed resolutions for us to consider, so we'll be bringing that forth to you at the next council meeting. And then we can start talking about what can we use it for, okay? The other thing is, they say you can use it under the guidelines they refer to in here, but nowhere do they say you can use it for the projects we're looking at, but they also say that you can't, they don't say that you can't use it for that project. So there's been enough question on it from other cities like ours that on the 26th of this month, there's a webinar that's going to talk about that the league is putting on. So when we're looking at item B, I think most of you have your budget packet that you had we handed out at the last meeting. There were a couple changes made to that that Marcia and Aaron talked about. This is your page. The question was, how do these numbers fit together and what do they really mean?
Which page?
This would be page 6.
6.
Yeah. And I've got a new page 6 for you I can hand out. You know, the question was, how do these numbers fit together? The totals are fine, but I noticed I had some grouping issues that I've since fixed. The next 2 pages behind that are the detail of what those numbers make up. Had a lot of questions on what makes up the other revenue number. What do those mean? So the detail is on the next 2 pages. So if you have any questions on that, please get those to me. Oh, okay. So then, we're talking about is capital outlay. You know, operations stay pretty much the same from year to year. There's not a lot that changes with it. You know, the power bills, the normal stuff you have every year. Where most of the money comes in is in capital, and we've had a lot of discussion on that. So we've got a couple specific items that we need to address, but included in your budget packet, the last 10 pages or so of that. You know, and these are all normal things. And getting back to, you know, budget amendments, you know, I've worked earlier in my career, you know, I was an auditor. I came into cities and I set up finance systems and I did audit work and did what Clifton Larson Allen now does for us. And sometimes clients have budget amendments. If big things change, significant things, they take 2 approaches. You know, they'll do a couple different amendments during the year. They'll do no amendments. Most all of my clients didn't do any budget amendments during the year. But what they did want to know is partway during the year is understanding where they were at during budget. And that's the information you get each month in the council packet. I do get questions on that from many of you. So that's good, keep that up. So there's no, what I'm saying is there's no requirement to amend the budget, but so you can amend it, you don't have to amend it. You can amend it as many times as you want. Or you can understand why it's changing or was different than what you thought it was. When I was a CFO in the corporate world, we did our budget, and then the day after we did the budget was accepted, it changed. And so then we would go back and we would look at what do we think our best outcome is, what's our worst outcome, and what's our likely outcome. And then we managed our budget, all 3 of those different scenarios based on where we thought we were at and compared that to what our original budget was. But in no case did we go back and amend our budget. We went back and explained why it changed from what we originally thought it was. So there's really no right or wrong way to do it. It's really whatever you're comfortable with. What I'd like to spend a little bit of time on is if we go, if you remember how this packet is set up, the first few pages of it show where we started with our original budget that we approved last December. And then it goes through and it looks at what changed since then. We have the Oregon money pending. That should be coming shortly. So things like that we've accounted for. And what we're trying to do is to figure out what changed and do we understand it? And now that we know what changed, how do we want to address it? So if I could get you to go back to page 24 or page 25. when we first started talking about capital, in the left-hand column is the original budget, the next column are proposed amendments, and then the amended budget is the third column. And we're tracking what did we spend to date. You know, we just kind of, the general comment at that time was, we'll just cut those in half. And we said, well, we budgeted for those items because we really did need to replace 2 computers down here in planning and zoning. The software we're running with the ArcGIS system, we could no longer run it on the units we had, so we needed to upgrade those. Those were, for practical purposes, about $1,900 a unit. We replaced, and then we're looking at replacing a desktop and a laptop. I know the clerk has been using her own laptop, which at home to keep things moving along, but that's no longer working because the computer has died. We have a similar situation with the fire department. We did not have a computer in the capital outlay budget for Chip that he uses. So what I'd like to do is,
Can you pull that document?
oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you.
I can see it just fine, but nobody else can. I'd like to restore, since this hasn't been approved yet, I'd like to leave it at the $4,052. We do have a quote for a replacement laptop for Shar, which is about $1,800. It'd be close to $1,900 once you get the rest of the software on it, and use the balance of that to buy and transfer it to Chip's department to replace his, yeah? Okay. Either way, we need to replace 2 computers. So either Chip can take it out of your power tools and leave this like it is. You want to do that? Okay. So are you okay with getting another, replacing Char's computer, a laptop?
Yeah, but this indicates 2 computers, they're $2,000 a piece, there's 4,000. We already did 2 in P and Z, is that not here?
That is not reflected in there because we paid for them. Oh, wait a minute. It's down here. Here's P and Z. We had the other part of it come through. So we replaced those. We're able to not spend as much because we didn't need to replace all the monitors. We recycled 2 of them. We had 2 that were compatible, and I took the 2 old ones, and then we replaced the other ones. So we had compatible monitors. So P and Z is out of here. So we do have a quote for replacement laptop, which is about $1,700 or $1,800 we'd like the council to consider. So we can keep things moving on that end and get our stuff off a personal computer. That's going to be through Dell. The quote $1,776.68, and then we need to add the Adobe Acrobat to it, which is $180.
So are you looking for a motion to move ahead with that?
Yep, we're looking for a motion and a second and a action to do that.
That's under EMS.
This one would be under,
Yeah, this is admin,
this one would be under admin.
and we have the money in there.
Yep,
We
it's
just
in there.
wanna get a new one.
And what I'm hearing Chip say is we don't need to unallocate the 2,000. He can shift some money in his small tools budget to do a replacement desktop for him.
So it's roughly 1,900 if
That's going to be around 1,900
I
Yep.
move that we go ahead and purchase the computer for approximate $1,900.
for the fire department.
I thought it was for,
Can't we do that at the regular meeting?
Well, we can do it now too. If you want to wait 2 weeks, then we're back out and getting new quotes.
Right. CTC said it's been a problem with shipping, so the earlier we get the order placed.
We're probably
The
looking
better.
at September timeframe to even get the unit here.
I'd second that. I'd like to go ahead and get started on it.
Okay.
So, but this is for Shar and admin,
Yep,
not the fire.
yep.
And
then
there's
we,
2,026 in there.
Yep.
we're gonna be within $100 of that when we get it set up.
Okay, any other discussion on that? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and what do you want to do with the fire department? The last one we purchased was for planning and zoning, which was about 1975 was the price that it came in at. And that was with the monitors, yep. Okay, so that's already, yeah, you need one like yesterday.
So you're good?
Yep.
Okay, so we could,
Computer's a small tool, so.
But we want to get them going now because we're looking at September at the earliest to
Need a
getting
motion?
stuff in here. For that one too, yep.
I'll make a motion to allow Chip to buy a new computer. Got 2,000 in the budget, that should cover it.
I second it.
Any discussion on it? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
And then at our last regular council meeting, the council directed Chip to go out and get a quote on changing security systems to Midwest, the rest that we're using. It's right behind you too, Chip, if you want to see it better. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and explain what you're doing there?
Like I mentioned in the council meeting that we have two different services provided to the city of Cross Lake. Right now we have Birchdale, which was purchased by Silent Night, who covers the fire hall, and then Midwest covers City Hall and
Police.
Public Works? Okay, community center. So their customer service is not very good. Plus, they never gave me controls of the key fobs so I can tell who's coming, or I can't even unlock the doors like Eric has the capabilities of doing that here. I don't have that capabilities right now. So I'd like to go switch over to Midwest so we're all under one umbrella, so it's easier to work with them. And this is the cost to switch it over. $1537 is to switch the modules and everything, and then it's $49.99 per month. And then the access system, $657 one time, and then $71.99 per month. And I have no idea what we pay now, so. Does any, do you? Yeah, I have card access right now, but I don't control it. Right, that's what I mean. I have fobs, but I don't.
I think you certainly need to be able to unlock and lock buildings when you need to go in and have the ability with your phone.
Right, like if we're moving forward and we're gonna rent out the room,
Yeah.
or if somebody's gonna be at the room, I can lock everything except for that.
Do you know what the current thing costs? Is there any comparison?
I have no idea. How much do you pay for this place?
So it's gonna cost us $2,200 to switch it over and $122 a month?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I think we already pay that amount a month for monitoring.
For monitoring, yeah.
so that's already be paid. The only addition is the card access.
And all the city buildings will be the same? Midwest will have everything?
Everything but which one?
Except mine, and we're working with the county looking at that right now.
And I think they were thinking about Midwest, weren't they?
Yes. They were in pursuit of a proposal.
Chip, do they monitor who comes and goes? Or at least who comes? I
Yep.
realize they don't check out.
Right.
But they monitor, so you know.
I can see who was there, who, at what time.
know that Aaron Herzog walked in there.
Right.
Yep.
Because we don't have a security system.
That's why I'm asking.
What?
Okay, so we've got a motion for that?
I'll move that we go ahead and we purchase those two items and approve the monthly access fees.
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Go ahead.
I guess I'm a little concerned that the fire department does not have a security system.
Yeah.
I thought we had one in there before and that everything would have gone. I think you guys should really think about taking a look at getting one for, yeah, great, we used to have one.
Just in the admin part of the.
Oh, it was only,
It was only in the admin
It
side.
had nothing to do with the fire department.
That's right.
we had a lot of expensive stuff in there.
Okay, let's finish this motion.
Okay.
We got a motion and a second to approve the change to Midwest. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. And then, I don't know, Chip, if you want to come to the meeting, I don't know. I mean, I think security is kind of a standard thing too, so.
Well, I don't think we can act on it until we have a cost, so.
Right.
Next meeting.
But he could bring some information for us.
Might want to take a look at is what we're asking.
Okay, are we good? All right. So let's talk about some of the changes you're looking at for 2021. If you go to your budget document on page 1 of it, I've listed out everything that has come up that's changed so far, that we've talked about. And what I've tried to do is identify the total revenues. You know, I mean, we can go through this process and say, well, you know, we sold the fire truck we sold a vehicle for 8,000 and we want to use 6,000 of it for this, or we want to use 2,000 of it for that. But at the end of the day, we still need to see how we're looking on the big picture and where we're coming out with things. So I've listed each one of those items that I'm aware of on there, whether it's been what we received, what's changed through what I know of as of June 30th. I've done the same thing for the expenditure sides on the next few pages. And when we get to the end of the day on this stuff, what we're really looking at is how much money, where are we coming out? Where are we coming out? Where do we think we're going to come out for the year end? Now, if you remember, this was our budget, and this is on page 5 of your materials. This was the budget that was approved last December, the total budget. And when we did that, we identified how we were paying for things, what we were purchasing, and then some of the one-off items. You know, we had carried some money over from 2020 for capital projects, whatever those were. We had set aside cash to pay for the balance of the fire hall. That's what we estimated it to be at that time. And then we said we have a difference, that we know something's going to happen, but we're not sure where we're going to spend those funds. We left ourselves a little bit of a cushion. We said we know we're going to spend some money in the utility fund, but we don't have a way to get money in there. So we're going to transfer it from the general fund. So now when we this is the number I'm really looking at, is how are we generating cash to pay for the things that we're doing? And where is it coming from? And when we make all these changes, if I can get you to turn to the previous page, that number goes, it was 101,000 on the page we just looked at. It changes quite a bit. When you look at that, you say $608,935, that's a big number. How did it get so big? To understand what that is, you have to understand how we funded our capital. You know, we've had a lot of questions on this. There's really 3 ways we pay for items we purchase. And it really doesn't matter what that item is. We either pay cash for it, whether that money came in through a donation, that was cash existing in the bank, we got a grant or whatever. We issue bonds for it, or we use our current year levy to fund things. On a high level basis, when we look at how do we pay for when we started this process in December, we said we've got $4 million of capital items we need to buy, whether that's a road or a truck or whatever it is. And then we backed into how are we going to pay for it? Well, we're going to have new debt for roads. We're going to have new bonds for the truck. We have cash that we set aside. We updated this for the cash that we had in the utility fund, plus what we thought we were going to transfer. And the balance to make it work out is our general levy. In a normal year, over the past several years, the city has levied about $800,000 plus or minus for capital type items. The councils have taken the position that I want to fund my capital with cash, levy, and debt, in a combination that helps me keep my levy consistent from year to year. When we pull out significant road projects, which I've listed down here on the bottom, when we delay projects, we're not going to issue bonds for those projects either. But the problem is, we've levied for part of those projects to make the budget work. So how much did we levy for road projects that we didn't do? It was about $458,000 is what we used to balance the road projects with cash.
Mike, what page are you on here?
This is the last page, it's page 34.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. I thought all of you had this memorized.
So then why do you decrease the bond proceeds by the total road project? You only have 900,000 in there now. That was for the truck, the fire truck.
I decreased it by what we ultimately ended up issuing for bonds. When we issued certificates for the fire truck, we reduced the size of the issue because we believed we would be able to issue those at a premium. And you had some money from Sourcewell for that. So we were initially looking at $865,000 for a bond issue.
But didn't you budget for bond proceeds for the road project?
Yes, we did. So we removed those along with the expense. So the road project was made up of two pieces. It was made up of $1,415,850 of expense. And then we said, how are we going to pay for it? We had $98,430 in the bank left over from what we levied for Wildwind Ranch Road that we didn't spend. And then we had estimated bond proceeds of roughly $900,000. That's how we're going to pay for it. Okay?
So we levied 458,000 for road projects we didn't do.
Correct. But then we said we're going to do $58,800 of it.
Engineering, yes.
Yep. And now we have new estimates for those road projects for next year that we can talk about.
So since we levied 458,129 and didn't spend it on road projects, that should be designated for road projects.
That's what the council can decide that. You can either say we want to spend it on roads or we want to let it flow through and cover what we overspent on the fire hall. Because remember, we're about $610,000 over what we originally thought we would spend. You can really do it either way. When we look at 2022, we can make that decision. We can decide if we want to, how much the road projects are going to cost, how much is going to be assessed, and how much cash we need for it. There's a lot of ways you can do it.
I think we should designate it for road project. I really do. And I'd make that motion, that we designate that 458,129 that we levy for road projects for road projects.
Can anybody else talk?
But not till there's a second.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
I just took the numbers off of, I don't know if you want to put this up. I looked at the delta, the difference in the first two pages. And it looks like I just looked at the expenditures, the gross number in the budget, and then the revised number, and then the revenue, the gross and the revised, and the differences. And I show that we reduced expenses a whole lot more than we reduced revenue, but we end up with about $390,000 if you round it up of money that we're not going to spend.
Well, that's shown right there on that page at 390.
And I just say that should stay in the general fund where it probably is, and just start out with,
Most of it's in there. We still have our second half settlement to collect.
But we levied for a road project.
I know, well, we didn't levy for fire hall overrun, so, I mean, that's,
Well, we knew we weren't levying for that because that was gonna come out of, cash.
But we didn't know it'd be $2 million. We expected it to be $1.4 million. It was significantly higher than that.
I
So-
realize that, but.
What you can do is, I mean, you can leave it alone and you can wait till you understand how the road projects are ultimately going to come out. We'll have information on that later this year. I mean, the point is you don't have to do that today.
I think we have more flexibility if we wait and decide what pot to put it in. You're going to have to put it in one pot or another eventually. You either got to levy for it or spend it on roads or spend it on something else. But I don't see that there's a rush to put it into a road account because that ties you down for levy on roads next year.
John, but we levied it for road construction. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I agree with you. We know that. Just that I'm saying things changed and you've got the money now. You may decide you want to levy more for roads next time or you don't need to levy as much. I just don't see the rush to move it into a pot.
you know, the argument can be made, if you levied it or you didn't levy it, what are you gonna do with it? That's, you know.
Yeah, that's really
I
what
think
you're
it's
saying.
just accounting entries that are meaningless in the end.
You know, and that's the challenge with doing a budget is you try to figure out where you're going to end up knowing that things will change. I mean, you can really do whatever you want with it. I mean, either way, you're gonna have to pay for the roads.
I'm not advocating spending any of it this year, just leave it sit where it is in the budget.
I think in essence, that's what Marcia's saying. Leave it sit in road project, but designate it so it doesn't disappear on us. Or am I misreading?
Yeah, it never disappears unless you approve to spend it.
I realize
Yeah.
that, but I'm saying
Yep.
sometimes all of a sudden we say, well, take it from there, and we should be aware of what we're
Yep.
staying on top of ourselves.
I think there's an argument potentially for putting it back in the general fund for a while too. I mean, we've spent that down somewhat, 600,000.
Yeah.
So there's an argument for putting it there too, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor,
Yep.
all right? We have a motion and a second, and the motion was to leave it designated to road projects? Is that correct? Okay, can I just,
22? For 2022? For road. Okay, for our next.
the only thing we did, I think, is we took 50,000 for engineering out of that.
I think you took that into consideration, 58.
Yeah, so there's a little bit left in that, yeah.
Well, so all in favor of leaving the road project designation to the road project, I guess, is that all right? The motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 3-2.
Okay, so,
This just means we're gonna spend more of our general fund.
right, but it doesn't mean that you need to spend that money. You can still bond and levy what you want for it.
Later, correct.
I mean, that's the biggest thing that changed in the budget was the road project. The other stuff, you know, and there'll be more changes too as we get through the next 6 months. So, do you want to leave the rest of the budget like it is for now and then revisit it when we get further through the year? Or, I mean, we just don't have the time to go through every line item on here because we know they're
The
going to change.
overages on the fire hall, though, what are we gonna, are we borrowing bonding money for that?
You're
or
paying,
where's-
no, it's coming out of cash.
Okay,
That's what I was
It's
trying
all
to-
cash.
yeah.
I do have a question about the crack ceiling,
Sure.
that 40,000 you put it, or.
That was
yes,
approved on May 3rd.
32,000. That was when?
That was approved at the joint,
That was sale of the truck?
no, here's the motion from May 3rd. This was the joint special joint council meeting with Public Works Commission on Monday, May 3rd, 2021. And here's the motion was made by Schrupp, seconded by Herzog to approve the 2021 crack sealing project at an estimated cost of $72,000.
Okay, so was that a Public Works meeting? A joint meeting?
Yep, was that a
Okay,
joint
that's
meeting?
what-
Yeah. You don't remember that one because you weren't there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like the city council taking action at Public Works meetings, that they would just wait and bring it forward to the council meeting.
Yeah.
It's a special council meeting joint with Public Works.
Yep.
I realize that, but,
And that used to not be.
Correct.
Well, it
right.
is.
And it was so that we could discuss at Public Works meetings, but we
Yeah.
weren't going to take action at those meetings, the council.
Then we didn't understand that.
Yeah, there was quite a lengthy discussion on it. And the council also approved Ted's budget.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, and the reason we needed to do that is because if we waited, we're not going to get the same pricing on that.
There was a
I'm
price
fine with it,
increase.
it was
Yeah.
done.
There was a price increase coming, and I asked that we could approve it at this time rather than waiting another week so I could keep the same prices.
Right. Okay,
Okay, so with respect to budget amendments for 2021, we've got a couple of them that we've already approved. There's a lot of other ones that are showing what the changes are on where we're going to come out in the end, in total. If there's specific ones you want to address that are listed on pages 1 through 3 of your document, that's what we should talk about, or if there's other ones that are not there that you'd want to make, you can do that. One thing that's really helpful is that if you get questions to me when you have questions, so we can get them addressed and have productive meetings. I love the questions.
so Mike, at what point, I got a couple thoughts I'd like to share on adding to the budget.
Okay,
One of them is that property behind Andy's.
okay.
There's an appetite to acquire that. Now, we haven't officially talked about that at the council, but when's the appropriate time to bring that up?
The appropriate time is whenever you can get it for the best price and you have a willing buyer and a willing seller.
Well, yeah, but I mean as far as budgeting for it.
Are you talking 2022?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we work on the 2022 budget.
Yeah, because the last time we looked at it, in fact, let's move on to the 2022 stuff.
Can I just stop you? Do we want to consider these amendments then and approve them or not? And then if we find something that we want to adjust in the last quarter or whatever, we can take it up then at a regular council meeting?
Yep, I'm okay with that.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2021 budget amendments for consideration on the document dated July 21st, 2021.
I second it.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next piece of information you have in front of you are some very, very preliminary tax rates for 2022. There's a little bit of history there in trying to figure out what is our tax rate, because our tax rate is really what we're interested in, because that's the rate at which gets applied to the taxable tax capacity that determines how much tax somebody pays, okay? So if you can see down here on the bottom, it's running right around that 30%, which is relatively low compared to our neighbors. And one thing I always look at is as I try to figure out, what our rate might look like based on a couple different scenarios. And when I do that, what I'm really interested in is zeroing in on what is that number right there and how do I get it? because that's what the tax rate gets applied to on your property tax to determine how much a taxpayer pays when they pay their taxes. So what I do is I look at the most recent information on what is the estimated market value. So between 2021 and 2022 preliminary, 116, almost $117 million increase. That's a big number. So we try to understand what makes that up, because we still don't know what this number is yet, what our tax capacity is. So we look at all these prior years and we try to figure out what's the relationship between the tax capacity and the market value and whether or not it makes sense. When I ran the numbers, it didn't make sense to me. And the reason it didn't, and we'll get to that in a minute, is because our value went up significantly. So in talking with the county, they believe the taxable tax capacity is going to be about $16 million, plus or minus, when they're all done. And the reason for that is they're seeing about a 10 to 13% increase in market value on lakeshore property, which is the bulk of our value here. They're also seeing that certain properties are changing classes and being developed. And they're also seeing some, to a lesser extent, some properties going down a little bit. But the large majority of things went up about somewhere in the range of 10 to 13% on value. And that's what the assessors determine that to be. So what does that mean?
Is the county going to increase the values then?
They already did.
They did, at 8.5 or 10?
The range they gave me was between 10 and 13.
10 and 13. So everybody's property is going to go, their estimated market values are going to go up 10 to 13%.
No, not everyone's. Certain properties, the properties they valued went up to that percent. They never really give you a good answer on, did your property go up but not yours? But they give you enough information to say generally it went up around that amount. And that's what's making up most of the 117 million increase in value. That's a big number.
Mine went up quite a bit. My house, the value on the sheet they sent us here, what, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks?
Yeah.
The sales ratio is the one that dictates that, right?
Yeah, one of them, yeah, a lot of things. There's a lag, and there's new construction that comes online. And if there's undeveloped property that's now developed, you know, it goes on the tax rolls. There's a little bit of a time lag with that. What does that mean? So if I just look at that big picture, if I left the levy as the same as last year, the tax rate would actually go down to 28.21%. If we left the tax rate the same, you would generate about $340,000 of money at the same rate based on the change in value. Now that works great when values are going up. It really works against you in a bad way when values are going down. So those are just some really preliminary numbers. When you look at what can I change in my levy, I can't. Basically, the only two numbers I can change in the levy are the top two. The overall general fund levy and what you do with the EDA. The rest are set by statute because they're tied to bond issues. And that's where the challenge becomes. When you issue debt, you have to pay it back. And that's why when we do projects, we try to balance how much debt we issue with how much cash we're willing to fork over for the project. You know, and a lot of questions I get say, well, I don't like your numbers. They don't make any sense to me. How did you come up with them?
I'm trying to tell the guy to come in. He's checking the bill.
And so what I do is I go out to the Minnesota Department of Revenue, and I've got a copy of this for you if you're interested in it. But what this is, they have a reporting system. What was it, Marcia? Prism?
What?
The PRISM, we were talking earlier before we started.
Oh.
What
He
does
asked me
PRISM
what
mean?
PRISM was, and then he read the next line, and it said property.
Yeah, that's where this comes from. It's a statewide system that every county in the state reports to and certifies that the numbers that they're placing values on are the values they're using. So what happens when you get to the end of the year is that there may be some minor little differences, but they're not big. So here's the 15 million, 1.5 billion number we were talking about earlier. And I overlaid 2020. So 2020 would be the assessment year. The year we're collecting the 2020 assessment is 2021. So you're collecting it the next year. I know on the sheet I showed you previously, it was about $4 million higher. And that's because there are certain adjustments that come in after the levies are ultimately certified and the rates applied. So they're really close. So that's for your information. I'll give you a copy of this when you leave. And so what we really try to do is we try to figure out, it's called the ATL report that comes out, but we won't have that until levies are certified. So we don't know what those values are. So that's why we go back and we try to figure out as best we can what our tax capacity is, okay?
Mike, remember, I was thinking EDA wanted $25,000 this year. Do you know for sure what they're going to want next year, what the issues are there?
No, what they're looking at is the comp plan review, some of that, and they should have adequate funds for that this year, depending on the timing, and they really haven't spent anything.
Okay, I'm thinking that this year they actually needed the 25,000, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
Yeah, it's a combination of existing cash and current year levy. This is how we do that, because they did have some cash on hand that they didn't spend. And so we tried to say, well, if you're going to spend, X number of dollars, let's see how much cash you have, so we don't leave a balance in the bank and over levy. So we can fine tune that. But when we look at, so there's a lot of good information out there. So if you ever want to spend some time looking at the PRISM system, PRISM, not prison, PRISM, there's a lot of good reports. So someone can say, well, how much does this class of property contribute and how much does that class contribute? That's where the numbers come from. This is current as of June 29th. There's another submission that comes out in October.
Does the county have this online?
No. This is through the state.
Okay.
This is what's reported by the county to the Minnesota Department of Revenue. And then they have to reconcile that with their own records. And they do make some changes. But there's all kinds of information out there if you're interested in fiscal disparity or tax increment or whatever. When we look at 2022, we always talk about how do we pay for the things that we want to purchase. Over the past few years, operations, unless you have major staffing changes, unless you do certain things that are unusual, your operations stay really consistent. And when we go through the budgeting process, you'll see that. The only thing that really changes really big or large are capital items. So in one year, if you issue debt for capital, the next year, the bonds change. So we've got a challenge coming up in 2022 levy. So when we go through this next year, if we issue new debt, you're going to see your levy go up for debt for about a 2-year period, for 2023 and 2024 until you have 2 issues that get paid off, and then the payments start dropping off. So there's a blip coming. We've seen that before, and we've been able to balance that with keeping the levy consistent, but then not doing a capital project or doing a smaller capital project. So we can try to keep things even. And again, there's 3 areas on how we pay for this stuff. We either use existing cash, current year levy, or new debt.
Can you give us a report on what we've done with our existing cash the last 5 years since we sold the phone company?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Yep.
one request, if you could do that. I'd just like to see. And then I'd like to be able to do a budget where we assume we don't have any cash. You've got to live within the budget.
And I've done those before. It's called,
No, I know that, I know that.
with
but
school districts, they call
we
it
just seem
statutory
to get in
operating debt.
trouble up here.
Yeah,
And we just can't keep spending
yep.
the cash.
So your bond issue, you can set that up so that we can get through 23.
Yeah, we can do that.
2023, have a small, pay interest or either
Yep.
pay a smaller principal deal, that can get us through so that the levy doesn't have to go up that.
Right, and then the assumption is, if you've issued bonds, you've done the project, you don't need to do the project. So if you're gonna keep your levy consistent, instead of using that levy for capital, you can use those same levy dollars for debt. Okay, the other thing we look at is, we're very fortunate here, especially in Crow Wing County. The statutes require you to levy 5% more than your debt payment. And that's because of delinquent taxes. Not everyone pays their taxes. In Cross Lake, that collection rate on each current year's levy is about 99%. So there's a very, very small portion of taxes that are delinquent. Very, very small, more so than anybody else. So we basically, whatever we levy, we get. We can count on. And so if you levy $3 million, for example, you're probably going to get $3,090,000 because of penalties and interest on delinquents from the last 7 years. So that's a solid number. But in the same token, the levy is very sensitive to what we do and how we spend money, because that is our source of revenue, is the levy.
For 22, Mike, one of the things I would like to at least have some discussion on is how do we level out the sewer fund, and we pay, we budget and levy accordingly to pay for it, versus having to take cash on hand and transfer and have savings to cover it, because that's about anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000, $300,000 every year.
The levy for the sewer fund is actually more than the revenue you generate from it. That's, you levy for the debt, and that's the way it was set up when it came online back in 2004. It was never intended to generate enough cash to pay for itself. But that creates its own problems in the future when you try to say, where did we save money to buy things?
I think we shouldn't be looking at how do we budget and then save.
Yep.
I think we should be budgeting appropriately.
Yeah.
Instead of.
And we do. And that's why when we look at these things, we say, okay, we're a little short over here on what we want to do from an operating standpoint.
Yeah.
We need to send some funds over there to pay for it.
And that's one of the things, and I realize that's going to impact the levy. I mean,
It does.
Aaron, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a concern, and I think we need to narrow it down. We've lived pretty fat off of that telephone company, and now we need to.
Yeah. So we're going to run short of time really quick, and I know you've all got a ton of questions. But what I'm going to leave you with are two documents. I'm going to give you this, what's called the county mini report we talked about earlier, and then I'd give you an updated capital report with what I know today for what 2022 looks like. We've got some challenges. We're looking at, in big round numbers, we're looking at about $6.8 million of project stuff. When you look at the two big projects, 66 and the 2022 road projects, that's about $3.4 million of that. The balance of that comes in through lift station rehabilitation, clarifier refurbishing, controls, and biosolids. I mean, those are big numbers.
So can we get, I assume that the departments are putting in their requests for 2022 budget?
Yes, they are.
Can we get those as soon as they put them together and provide
Yeah,
them?
they're working on, I've got most of them pulled together right now. But what I really want you to focus on is how we're gonna pay for all the capital requests that are in here. And I'll give you a new sheet for that.
Okay.
The operations stay really stable from year to year. The big numbers are capital and debt.
So if there's any changes in operating expenditures, they would note that in their request?
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever happened to that social media archiving? That was going to cost us $2,000 this year and $5,000 next year.
Go ahead, Eric.
We decided not to do that. Talked more to the league. TJ talked a little bit more. We're just gonna hold off.
Well, because the comments can be taken off the minute you read them. And then the business stuff can go directly to Shar, right, after they've been posted? Anything that's not on the retention schedule, the retention schedule, our retention schedule, is not city business.
Right, yeah, we're not
Right?
gonna do a whole lot of
Oh, because I
business
thought
on
it was
social
an
media.
emergency.
No, it's not worth the risk.
I mean, if we were looking at doing business on social media, then we would, but we decided, you know, it's just not really worth it to try to do the social archive, and we'll just try to find some other means to get it out to the public.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered about it because it was an emergency that night.
Okay, so the document you just handed out, you know, was the information from the property tax system from the state. The other page packet you have is the,
Never seen this before. Wayne County.
capital portion. And what I'll try to do on this, and what I've pushed back to department heads is, okay, so you've got a capital request. Tell me up front how you're gonna pay for it. What's the revenue source? Is it existing funds that we've reserved in capital? Is it new levy dollars, or whatever it is? So, and it's a working process, and we'll keep it going. Future meetings, we're probably looking at a couple meetings in August, one in September. And Shar will be sending you out a doodle poll, see what works for you.
We have a crowd growing outside.
Okay, they're here to see me.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.